Okay. Hello, everyone. Thanks again for joining us. I think we'll go ahead and get started. Again, we really appreciate everybody taking the time to join us today as we discuss NetSuite for Tech VARs. So let me go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Seth Cohn. I'm the marketing manager for Keystone Business Services. I'm also very pleased to be joined by Eric Joswiak, our president and owner, as well as Catherine Capone, who's joining us from Nexonia. I'll let them introduce themselves in just a minute. And the agenda for today, we're going to go through some of the industry challenges that we appreciate you guys may be running into, as well as a couple quick demos of both NetSuite and Nexonia. And we'll sincerely try to save a couple minutes towards the end for some Q&A. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Eric.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Seth. Appreciate that. So what we wanted to do, as far as the introductions, we have just a few quick slides on Keystone, NetSuite, and Nexonia, just to provide a little bit of context for the vendor, for the firms that are presenting today. And then the majority of this, we're going to focus on highlighting the challenges, and then looking at how NetSuite and Nexonia can manage the all business operations for tech, for VARs in the tech industry, working in specific demo accounts. So we are Keystone Business Services. We are a NetSuite solution provider partner. The company was founded, we are located in Oak Brook. We were founded 12 years ago as a NetSuite solution provider partner. Been in that program since the start. We actually run our business on NetSuite. And so we've been a cloud integrator, as we would call it. It's not really a VAR. I think the attendees, you can appreciate, we don't resell, right? We're more a pro services partner of the cloud providers. So we have over 130 cloud computing clients. We do, I personally believe in certifications. So NetSuite has a range of certifications: certified developers, certified financial experts, certified administrators, certified ERP consultants, and all our folks are carry certifications for their role. And then we also do work with Salesforce a bit. We have a number of customers who do ask us to also assist with their Salesforce implementations. And then Jitterbit is middleware. And it's great to be talking to integrators. I think you understand. In the cloud space, there's not a big resale margin at the start of a project, so we really have to work with our clients over time and help them optimize and help them stay on the platform. That's as a cloud integrator, it's more building up a client base over time is where you find your long-term success. So that's about Keystone and who we are. As far as Oracle NetSuite, so Oracle was actually founded back in 1998, originally funded by Larry Ellison. He backed a couple of former Oracle employees, one of which is Evan Goldberg, who is a developer and is still Chief Technical Officer of NetSuite. NetSuite has 6,500 employees globally, and actually that's been increasing. They have 40,000 plus clients. As of the end of 2016, they had a run rate of $1 billion in annual revenue. Now they're actually a division, right? They were acquired by Oracle in late 2016. And I'm sure that's above that. Oracle's put a lot of additional effort behind both development as well as expanding internationally. The acquisition was back in November of 2016. So NetSuite is now a standard global business unit of Oracle. As an integrator, I can tell you this has been good. We see Oracle has put a lot behind marketing and a lot behind product development, and we're seeing actually good traction in the market. So as a partner of Oracle, actually the acquisition has worked well. Sometimes you wonder if the acquisition as a partner of a firm, right, if it's going to be good for the channel and where they're going to go. But for us, looking back now almost a year later, things have worked out very well. So really quick, just why people choose NetSuite, and you're going to see this, but it is a cloud application designed for the modern business, right? We work with a lot of clients who have old trend-based software from, green screen, software from the 80s, and just the old database structures and the way that software was architected, very different from how NetSuite was architected. There's a lot of built-in flexibility. We'll talk about that in the demo. There's a lot of things we've done specifically for the technology VAR that really, help. There's definitely gaps in default NetSuite that we filled in with small customizations throughout the process. Unified data model, so there's one data model. Again, we'll talk about this in challenges, but NetSuite is not only good with hardware resale, but they also have a services resources planning, so your pro services team can run all on one database. Everyone sees the same set of data. Omnichannel commerce, not so much an issue for this industry. So not a lot there, but built for your industry. Really, again, this is where we've really kind of filled in the gaps and have a solution that's really focused on the Tech VAR vertical. And I think the next slide is actually about Nexonia. So, Catherine, if you want to take a minute and provide a little bit of background on Nexonia.
Sure, yeah, I'd love to. Thanks very much, Eric. Yeah, so as Eric mentioned, my name's Catherine, and I'm actually a part of Nexonia's product education team here. And I'll certainly be showing you a live demo in just a few minutes, but before we get to that, I do want to talk a little bit about who we are. So Nexonia has been serving a global customer base since 2004, and we developed technology to make corporate time and expense management easy, efficient, and automated. So, we've been working hard to expand the features and functionality of our products, also the range of industries we support as well. So we're actually serving over 1,200 companies in 18 different countries with a wide variety of customers in many industries. We are also software as service, so this means there's nothing to install. So, you're accessing Nexonia via any major web browser or, of course, through our dedicated mobile apps as well. So this is allowing users to actually submit and approve expenses and timesheets either through iOS, Android, or BlackBerry 10 devices. And what you'll soon see in a few minutes here is really the ease of use and the usability of our products there. So I guess just to wrap it up here, the technology and our product integrations are really key factors in what attracts growing and small, medium-sized businesses to Nexonia, but certainly our commitment to customer experiences as well. So in terms of getting companies up and running, it's really a collaborative experience, right from onboarding with our implementation teams through to training and going live and access to support and so forth. We really are with everyone kind of every step of the way there.
Great. Well, thank you, Catherine.
Mm-hmm.
So that wraps up actually the intros and the company overviews. Now we want to talk about the challenges. So I've got kind of 3 challenges I've teed up, and getting into 3, I've kind of grouped some things together. But this is kind of how I view it. And and one comment, I did run. I was in leadership and then president of a Cisco reseller. That was my prior job and company before starting Keystone. And so I kind of lived through the challenges in the Tech VAR industry, and I think that's one of the reasons why we were able to kind of build this customized solution, is because I've sat where everybody where everyone on the call is today, and I understand the challenges. We had a lot of these challenges, and although it was that was 10, 12 years ago, we do work with a lot of VARs, and some of these have actually gotten more challenging since 12 years ago, and there's been additional complications, but the core is still there. So the first is really a complex sales process, and there's many many attributes, I think, to this. I kind of put several things into this category. Right, typical wholesale distribution company, they've got a product catalog and they've got pricing rules, and it's relatively easy. Not so much for the folks in the technology industry where, you know, there's 3 million SKUs that you can sell. Of course, you'll probably only quote 10,000 per year, but you really don't know which 10,000 you're going to quote. With 10 to 20,000 you're going to quote, or maybe 30,000. That's if you're kind of in the smaller resale, the CDW model, right? Where the challenge on that side is, how do I get real-time cost and availability, right? Because a lot of that is cost plus, and when you're quoting, you really need to know cost plus for what's on stock and what's available to say sell today. That was not what was available last week. Of course, you know, pricing varies by distributor, availability varies by distributor, not only by the distributor warehouse. And then for the others in the enterprise space, you know, you've got a sales process where you're building a BOM which might have 300 individual components. And you've got to look at what's your cost on that, and then what's the sale to the customer. And obviously, you know, pricing is critical. You can't misprice. Margins are slim. If you misprice, you have an issue. And then on top of that, you've got deal registration that you have to figure into your margins. You've got rebates that you have to figure into your margins. You've just got a lot going on with that opportunity, and because margins are slim, you need a very effective way to capture all that information on an opportunity, understand it, know it, and you know, make sure your quotes are accurate. And so we have spent a lot of time on the front end. We've built a number of tools, and there are some other partners, even partners who aren't here, who do have solutions. But we've built solutions for, you know, importing from a BOM, right? Importing, if you've got your Excel file with your BOM and 300 lines, you know, you can import that into NetSuite. We create the SKUs on the fly because, again, a lot of the SKUs aren't created in advance. We bring in the cost of the pricing. And then typically there's also a margin approval process. We're not going to, in the interest of time, we're not going to show you that today. But there's a lot of times a margin approval process on the quote. You know, if you're below a threshold, oftentimes it's a single-digit threshold, it has to go to management, you know, for approval, right? The other thing is, and which we will show you, is just flexibility in how you present quotes to customers, right? It's not one size fits all. Some clients want to see you need to be able to present every line on the transaction. At other times, you need to be able to, you know, group by, say, line of business with all hardware grouped together in one line, software or maintenance in a second line, and maybe implementation in a third line. At the end of the day, you need to quote those, right? Because as you'll see, the challenge, you need to quote those, and you need to make sure that what you're quoting and the costs on your quote are actually what flows through to your sales order. That matches what issues your PO. We'll talk about that. That's some of the next 2 or 3 challenges. But anyways, you know, that's the other challenge. And then just the third challenge, and this isn't necessarily anything specific customization. This is just the business challenges. You know, everyone's trying to move and add managed services or professional services onto their, you know, onto their quotes and into their selling, which is a big shift. You know, a big challenge to shift that. But it is all designed, again, to get higher margins and understand what those margins are at the time of the quote. So that's kind of the first one. There's, you know, a whole slew of challenges there. I think everyone's very familiar with them. The second one is, you know, managing a new business model. Again, this tacks on to the pro services challenge. So, or, you know, to the drive for more margin. So, you know, companies that haven't had pro services organizations in the past have been actively building them. And now it's even managed services, right? So there's more and more VARs that are looking to build out managed services businesses. The challenge with that from a business perspective is it's a very different business model. And, you know, the business model of I'm going to quote, I'm going to cut a PO, I'm going to fulfill, right? That's very much a, you know, inventory and a bit, you know, parts and items type of process. But now you've got pro services, and it's not so much the quoting the pro services, it's managing them, right? You need ticketing systems, right, if you're going to do managed services. You need to be able to look at margin on your managed services. You need not only an accounting system and a platform that can support just a resale model, now it needs to support a project and time tracking, and how are you going to track time, and how are you going to look at project profitability, which is a completely different animal than, hey, how much did I make on that order reselling some hardware? So, you know, so overall profitability in the services space, I'm sure many of you on the call are, you know, understand. And a lot of times people will go out and they'll just do a both. They'll just, you know, start running their pro services on a separate non-integrated application. And then, you're trying to figure out at the end of the day how profitable you are on any one sale or with any one customer. So it's the non-integrated application that's a challenge. And then just, again, the third point, again, not necessarily implemented in NetSuite, but NetSuite has just released some human capital management and recruiting tools. But, recruiting and retaining top talent, right, that becomes a major focus for management. Yep. And then the third one, and this is the last slide, well, then we'll kind of transition over to the demo, is streamlining operations. And so, what we most typically see is, a front-end quoting process where people are quoting, and then you've got a separate ERP, which oftentimes is non-integrated. So you've got, you need, and then a third platform for pro services. And you've got a lot of manual reaching of information, trying to move information from one system to the other, and no real simple way of conducting business. So one of the things we're going to show, actually, and I think Nexonia is also going to show, these systems are integrated, right? So NetSuite, because they have a good inventory management platform and a good project management platform, it's all on one system. Your consultants are, you're creating your projects at the time of sales order. Sales order is created from the quote. All your quote and your pricing and your vendor information from the quote flows over to the sales order. From there, you cut your PO. That's where you also auto-generate your project. Then your PM goes in, staffs the project. All the revenue all falls through. And there's a lot we're not going to show just because in the interest of time. We've got 30 minutes for a demo. We're going to do less on the PS side. Typically a full demo of this is probably about 2 hours, right? So even that can be short depending on where we're going to focus our time. But we're really streamlined operations, and we'll cover this in the demo because we're going to go from a quote to a sales order to a PO to a fulfillment to a vendor bill to an invoice without reaching anything, right? Again, you load all that information up, whether it's a BOM from your engineers have built from the vendor portal, or whether it's firms like Quozel also have ways of getting the information into the quote. But the key is once it's in the quote, nobody's reaching anything downstream, and that's what we're going to show you. So not only quote to the sales order and the purchase order, but also your purchase order to cash and your sales order to project to cash. All that flows through, right, without any manual intervention. On the project, typically the project manager will go in and set up the project and the project task and the work breakdown structure and assign the resources, right? That does require some additional work. But anyhow, the goal is just to make this very easy and seamless and error-proof for your employees. And again, the simpler you can make things for your employees, that does help with retention. That does help with how they like working at your firm. And then separately, it does provide management, right, with good visibility into operations and results. So sorry, my PC shut down right before I'm gonna present. Anyway, so next slide is just here's what we're going to show in the demo, which we're going to start here now, but which is about 30 minutes, so we're still on track time-wise. Is the NetSuite front end. I'm going to show you a couple different quotes, right? And so we're going to do a maintenance quote, write a maintenance renewal. We're going to do a new sale with some hardware, some maintenance, some installation. We're going to review kind of how typically we like to load information, how we track margins on those. We're going to look at emailing you always email your quotes from within NetSuite. Provides great traceability. Then we're going to take that quote and we're going to transition it into a sales order. We're going to cut dropship POs, fulfill those POs. We're going to invoice the sales order after the fulfillment. And again, what you'll see is, we can do this in about 2 minutes, right? Very quick, very seamless, and accurate. And then on the SRP side, we're actually going to, we're going to spend, one of the key things on SRP is actually time and expense entry, right? Because that's really, where, that's the most direct impactful on your people, right? So you might have, 5 PMs managing projects in NetSuite. you could have 50 resources in the field. And so instead of going through and taking the, the limited time we have to review how to set up the projects and the work breakdown structure, we're going to let Nexonia kind of review, how the people in the field then are going to enter time and expenses against those projects. And there's great value there. We have a number of customers on Nexonia or Nexonia. I think I mispronounce it all the time. Sorry about that, Catherine. but we do have, it is. We're gonna focus on that and then wrap up. So Seth, if you want to flip it over to me, I'll go ahead and get started.
Great.
So while Seth is doing that, actually, what we're going to start with is I'm just going to start with a bit of a basic overview of NetSuite, just so you can kind of understand what the application looks like and how it feels for users, and just kind of some of the management reporting that you'll get out of it. We'll time permitting, hopefully we won't run out of time, but we'll come back and look at some reporting at the end as well. But this is a NetSuite account. This is a live demo account. We're able to come in here and customize it and modify it. And NetSuite is a role-based application, right? So every role has access to different information, right, and different records. So I'm logged in, you can see up here, as a senior executive. So as a senior executive, I have access to sales, marketing, expense, HR, and financial. I'll show you a sales rep, but a sales rep doesn't have access to financial because they don't get to see the P&L, right? So as a senior executive, I have really good information to all the data and key health of my business. Excuse me, about to sneeze. I'm a little. I think I have some allergies working this morning. But here's a good example, right, of how NetSuite makes it, income and sales and profit and average gross profit, right? The things that you want to highlight, you can put right in front of you. We can set these up, make them very visible. These executive financials, these are key health for your business today, this week, this month, last month, this fiscal quarter, year to date, last fiscal year. You can see here you're tracking sales, average deal size, COGS, gross profit. Average gross profit per invoice, operating expense, net profit margin, et cetera. So all inventory terms. I mean, inventory typically in the tech industry is not important because everything's drop shipped, from one of the main vendors. And then here's links to typical reports that you'd want to see, and then also a lot of these a lot of different metrics. And these are all, NetSuite is a very customizable application. Here you can see recent records is collapsed. If I click on it, it's going to open it. If I want to, move things around, I can simply just drag and drop, right? And things can move around. Again, NetSuite's, to that, if you think back to why people buy NetSuite, it's flexible. That's just a very simple example, right? And you'll see we've created a lot of custom fields. And just real quick before we go through the actual demo itself, if I come in here and if I look at the sales role is going to be very different, right? The sales role, first off, my main navigation is my leads, my opportunities, my customers, and my forecast. So instead of being, customers, expenses, and financial, right? And here I'm tracking my sales, having a good month, ahead of my plan. I've sold 292 versus my 230 quota or goal. And just all, access to key information here about, my new leads, my sales. Instead of overall sales, it's my sales, right? The executive sees everything. As a sales rep, I'm just looking at myself. Available to sell. If you do stock things, this is very helpful. Reps can see exactly what's available to sell. We have, although it's a more complex, for a larger client, we have done available to sell actually feeds to multiple vendors. So from within NetSuite, they can call out in real time to say, I want to see what the various vendors have in stock for that SKU by warehouse, right? And so, because of course shipping costs can be a big hit on profitability when margins are thin. So oftentimes it's not only what do they have in stock, but actually which warehouse is it, because they don't want to ship it across the country. So that's that's the main atlas. I'm going to actually work in the administrator role, mainly just because I'm going to do a lot of things. I'm going to create quotes. I'm going to send quotes to customers. We're going to create sales orders. We're going to fulfill sales orders. We're going to invoice orders. We're going to, create a vendor bill. And instead of just hopping around from role to role and making a little jumpy, I'm just going to stay in this role where I can actually do all transactions. So again, this is an administrator, which you might say, gee, it kind of looks like the others, right? It's got its own dashboard. Notice every dashboard for every role is different. And the main navigation up here is, again, it's a little more techie, like admin type person. So transaction list reports, customization, right? Instead of customers, vendors, or opportunities. So I did stage a quote for the ACM group, which I'm going to show you. So this quote is, quotes are pretty typical, right? I think everyone understands what a quote is. In NetSuite, quotes are created from opportunities. You can create multiple quotes, for one opportunity and manage that in your forecast in your pipeline. I'm not going to spend much time on that today, but, you can quote a good, better, best, 3 different iterations, and then the sales rep at the end can choose, right, which of the ones they want to forecast. That is a nice feature we have, especially in the enterprise space. I've seen clients with 15 different iterations, 15 different quotes on a single opportunity. NetSuite makes it easy to do that and keep a solid and accurate forecast for your business. So down here, of course, is where is where we're putting all of our SKUs. So on here, I've actually got 3 hardware SKUs, a maintenance SKU, and then a professional services implementation. So one of the things, just a few things that we always like to bring in, right? Here's the actual sale price to the customer, but we always categorize these by class. So class not only because at the end of the day you're going to want to report margin and revenue by class. Oftentimes you do approval routing by class as well. So and class is hardware versus maintenance versus services. Sometimes people will put software in there as a 4th line of business. But again, that flows through all the way, all the way to financials. But we always like to show list price, right? In the tech industry, right? We'll show list price. Atlas is actually the Atlas is the customer, is the VAR in this case. So Atlas is buying this at 60% off. The customer is getting 12% off. Start date and end date. This is more for maintenance. We're going to show you that in a minute. And then we look at the unit cost and the gross profit on a SKU by SKU basis, right? And you can see in here that you've got lines in here that are 0, right? 0 revenue, 0 cost. Sometimes they're 0 revenue, but they have a cost, right? It's pretty common to lump 100% of the revenue in the top line item of a build and just show that top level SKU. Everything else is all in here because it all has to go on the PO. You just don't need to show it to the customer, right? And that helps you understand the profitability. On the gross profit, right, this is where, we're tracking the gross profit. And this is the default functionality, right? NetSuite does it singly. Oftentimes we'll do hardware gross profit, maintenance gross profit, and services. Or we'll, because hardware and maintenance a lot of times are both resale, they get lumped together into a resale gross profit. Again, and that can feed into approval routing. So it's pretty common that, okay, if you're under a threshold, which might be under, say, 10% GP, that then needs to get routed. That quote needs to get routed for approval to either a manager, and then even above that, as the deals get bigger and as the margins get slimmer, you can have tiered approvals through multiple layers of management. But again, we're making all this visible, right? This is how people in the VAR community, this is the information they need to be able to talk to the customer about what they're buying, customer's discount off list, the VAR discount off list. And then here you'll notice, I've got these print layout options, and I'm going to edit this for a second. But we're going to, typically there's an option, do you want to print, the line items with 0 amounts or not? Typically not, so I'm going to uncheck that. And then what type of layout, right? So I've only done 2. The a lot of times there's, show all, and I've got one for maintenance that I'll show you in a second, one for line of business. So I'm going to choose the line of business quote layout, and again, reps can add this, and we've had reps who, we've got a baseline functionality. We've got some clients who had 6 or 7 different print layouts and several other, print-related options, right? Sometimes they even want to put, vendor logos on a page, or co-brand or not co-brand, and all those options. All we do is we make them available to the reps, and then the reps can control exactly how they want to present things. But if I print this, it's going to actually print by line of business. It is going to roll up. So you can see here it says, what's the line of business, hardware, maintenance, and services. And here it's rolling up, to the top level SKU in each category. So, this is the subscription for VMware. That 71, 77, 97 is actually the sum, right, of all 3 of the hardware items, right? So we're putting this automated, grouping in. You can elect not to group, right? We could do, options for, group it by line of business, but show the line item detail. Again, that's all up to client requirements, and again, it's all one form. So that just has to say how they want to print, and then they print. And then the other nice thing here, is the email functionality. So right from here, I can email. You're going to have a template. You can email, to the customer or to any individual contact at that customer. I'm going to email this to myself. Oftentimes there's a standard template. Reps can even have their own customized templates. These templates can be, quote follow-up template, right? And then typically you're going to include it as a PDF. You can also include your quotes as inline HTML, but they have better control over format, if it's a PDF, and, HTML really depends on how people view it. And do merge and send, and then I sent my quote to the customer. So, and then if the customer does reply, they will, that reply gets attached here as well. And so if I look at the activities tab down here, right, I can actually see, oh yeah, I sent this to Mark. I got a copy of the attachment, would be the same print that I did. I can see, when it went, and then his reply would also get attached here, as well as show up in my email. So a lot of very effective, effective technology. If you're familiar with Close-All, right? I mean, you can use Close-All. Close-All integrates with NetSuite. We've kind of put some of their functionality. What Close-All doesn't do is now what I'm going to show you next is just streamlining through the rest of the operation. So at this point, I'm going to say, great, customer sent back. I've got I'm going to create a sales order. So typically, the sales rep will attach the signed customer estimate to the sales order, and then it goes off to sales ops for approval. We're going to skip the approval, but you can see here I've got the sales order. Everything is flowing over directly from the directly from the quote. And I'm just going to go ahead and save that. And then from here, what we want to do, and all the margins, right? If you get your quote from your vendors, all those margins are stored on the quote. What we do is we flow those costs into the PO rate column, this is standard NetSuite functionality. You can see I've got all 3 line items are associated to tech data. Again, this is typically stored on the quote. We bring it over, and then we're able to just very simply, then it goes to accounting or procurement. They come in here, they click the dropship PO. Again, one click. We're not rekeying anything. And this is going to go ahead and create the dropship PO at the costs that were initially uploaded, right? And I do need to add a location here. That's a required field. So we're doing that. Now we've created our quote. Eventually, now I'm back at the sales order. That's a dropship PO that went to Tech Data. I get a notification from Tech Data that the goods have shipped. So I go in and add here, and I'm going to say I'm going to fulfill, write this order, noting that it's shipped. And I can put the tracking number in here if I get it. And if you have EDI, actually, this whole process can be automated, right? Sending the PO to Tech Data, getting the acknowledgement back with confirmed ship dates, the confirmed prices, getting the shipment notification, which actually generates the fulfillment, can be automated as well. So I'm going to mark all these and say that all of these were fulfilled. I'm going to go ahead and save and bill that. And I'm going to immediately create the invoice. Again, this is all just done a single click. There's actually work queues that are set up for your people in accounting to see what's required. From here, this is the invoice now. I'm going to save the invoice, and that is going to, typically you'll email this to the customer as well. Again, EDI is also an option. And then the last to do is going back to the purchase order. This purchase order, eventually, right, when you do get the vendor bill, right, recognize oftentimes there's a lag in between, the shipment notification from the major distributors and when you actually get your vendor bill. But accounting will eventually get a vendor bill. They're able to pull up the PO. They're able to validate that, oh yes, this shipped. They see when it shipped, and then they'll go ahead and enter their vendor bill. And at this point, I have I've actually completed the whole cycle except for the payment, right? So in about 5 minutes, granted only one transaction, it's went from vendor from quote to sales order, cut the PO, got the shipment notification, marked it as fulfilled, invoiced the customer, and then eventually you're going to enter that vendor bill. So when we say seamless, streamlined, right, you're not going from one system in a quote, getting it into the ERP system and having to do everything there. And then, so this is from streamlining the order process. NetSuite handles that extremely seamlessly for folks in the for VARs in the tech industry. So with that, I'm going to we're going to introduce back to Catherine. So as part of this process, we would have set up the project, right? Your PM would have set up your project and assigned your resources to do the implementation in NetSuite. And then at that point, the key thing really when you're doing that project is then making sure you're recording, all the time and expenses. And whether it's a fixed bid project, you need those time and expenses entered because you're going to charge the time to the project just from a P&L perspective, so you can validate your project profitability. Or if it's a T&M project itself, all those time entries, right, need to flow through the billing. So it really depends on. In either case, you need to have all the time tracked for the project. We see a lot of people entering stuff in Excel. We see people using various time and expense entry applications. We see a lot of rekeying of time entries between systems. When we before we implement NetSuite. So, but with that, I'm going to turn over to Catherine, who's going to kind of talk about that whole time and expense entry on the PS side for the implementation, and then we'll come back and wrap up.
Okay. That's great. Thanks, Eric. All right, so before I actually share my screen here and start showing Nexonia, I just have a couple slides I want to review. And I guess just to start here with the challenges of expense and time management. So, typically whenever I ask somebody about their experiences with T&E reporting, they often make a face, and it's typically not a very happy one. So we know it's necessary for any part of business, but typically it's no party for anyone involved there. So just to run through some points here, we know the process can be ultimately too time consuming. It's also very difficult to scale and just overall frustrating. So things like employees failing to get their expenses and timesheets in on time. Often they're missing key details. So if you think about project, billable status, receipts, etc. Also a risk of expense fraud. So any non-compliant expenses, those that are missing receipts or duplicate claims, and then also of course maintaining accurate accounts for auditing purposes become especially challenging. As well as managing dispersed workforce, So if you have to think about having your users track value-added taxes or currencies. And then sometimes we see just an end-of-month overload of expense reports and timesheets and errors resulting in lost revenue and so forth. As well as a general lack of visibility. So if you think about spending on travel, if out of pocket, typically organizations aren't even made aware of that. It's not visible until it gets claimed. So sometimes that can be problematic for companies as well. All right, so I think we've been going back and forth a little bit here with the slide deck. I need to go forward 2 slides here, if you don't mind, Seth.
Sure, you got it, Catherine.
Mm-hmm. There we go. Yeah, so all of these are reasons why we're seeing organizations move towards automation. So it's all about achieving efficiency by removing this sort of paper and those, manual steps out of the process. So, we're giving employees the tools to submit and approve T&E either on the web or the mobile app, as we'll see, and seamlessly integrating with accounting systems such as NetSuite. So just by doing that, we're eliminating a lot of those challenges, and we're ensuring essentially that critical data is maintained, and that the risk of lost data is mitigated as well. Okay. So thankfully Nexonia has a solution. There we go. All right, so let's talk a little bit about expenses. So I'll actually take you through a quick demo there. But before discovering Nexonia expenses, I spent a lot of time at companies manually submitting expense reports, so using paper Excel printouts, stapled receipts. But since using this automated platform, honestly, I never want to go back to that time of stacks of paper and lost expense reimbursement. So what we'll see is that using this technology is just so much more reliable and easier from a user perspective. And then next slide again. There we go. And then similarly, our timesheets as well. So we've got timesheets and time off. And, these solutions allow you to log time very quickly. And we're even able to, track complex fields and dimensions so that it's organized and everything is synchronized back into NetSuite and back on the web and so forth. All right, I think there's one more slide there before we get started. And it's specific to NetSuite. Yeah, so essentially what we're doing is we're integrating NetSuite via web services. So we're actually able to use NetSuite as a source of record. So all of their dimensions and values we're able to pull in automatically, and then synchronize over fully approved time and expenses. So the information is flowing in both directions. An administrator can always trigger it on demand, but typically what we do is we set up a schedule. So, every day the information is pulled into Nexonia and then pushed back to NetSuite and so forth. But we'll see what Nexonia is about in just a moment here. I'm just actually going to start by sharing my screen. I might have to be an organizer there. There we go. All right, so just to confirm that you can see my screen there, I'm sharing my mobile app as Beth. Can you see that there? Okay, yep, perfect, good. All right, cool. So I'm actually going to start by taking you through a quick demo of expenses. So we are available on iOS, Android, BlackBerry 10, and of course on the web as well. Now the nice thing with the application, and if I close out of here, you're going to see them both at the bottom, expenses and timesheets, is that the information syncs. So everything that I add on the mobile app is going to be visible on the web as well. So it's really giving users the freedom to start and finish their expenses or time on either platform because the information syncs over. Now, when it comes to expenses, one of the first things that a user will want to do is create a report, because the report is sort of like the bucket or the house for expenses. You create that report and then you add in individual items. So reports can be organized many ways. You'll see at the bottom I've got a couple: trip to New York, October, for example. If I slide to the right, I can see more as well. Let's actually open this November report. So here's where I'm inside an expense report. I've got one item there. Now the red paperclip is giving me a clear visual cue that I'm missing a receipt. But let's imagine we wanted to add a brand new item. So I'm just going to tap on Add Item. And I can create one that's reimbursable, or we also integrate company credit cards as well. So for now, let's do an out-of-pocket, something that's owed back. And I'm going to start actually just by taking a quick photo. So if I was, on a trip, or I had my receipt here, use photo. There we go, and then filling in the details. Now these fields are configurable, so we can vary what information we're tracking against based on company currency. I've got it set to Canadian, but we can change that. We can even turn on other currencies if you needed to. We support over 160 currencies. And then the date will default to today's date. Of course, I can change that. And you'll see customer and project, so those fields are configurable. That information would pull directly from NetSuite, all of your values, for example. And project, we can even filter projects. So if there's, for example, if Beth only needs access to 1 or 2 projects, we'd be able to do that for her. Category are your expense types. So let's just do an internet, for example. Scroll down. We can track taxes. Watch what happens when I choose Ontario. That's where I am. You'll see that the HST is calculated automatically, and then the before tax total is there as well. So a lot of the calculations are done for the user. Now any field you see in red, like department, is mandatory. It means I have to fill in a value. Otherwise I won't actually be able to complete this item. Tap Save, and now that item has been added to my expense report. So that's how easy it is to add items. Watch what happens this time if I tap on credit card. All of my credit card transactions are integrated here. So if I've got a company card, these transactions are coming in on a daily basis, and all I need to do is tap on it, and it's going to turn it into an expense item. So I'd follow the same format. I'd code it against whatever fields I'd see. I can obviously take another picture. I could also email in receipts or upload them on the web or pull from my camera roll, which is what I'll do now. So lots of ways. And the idea is once you get all that information in, you will actually want to submit it off for approval. So it can be routed through any approval process that you need. Really, a simple one would be sending it to your manager and then maybe the director for final approval, or alternatively, we can base it on project managers, or we can have the department drive the approval, or even spending thresholds. Often we see, if it's over $1,000, we need it routed one way or routed another. And then what you'll see here is I just opened up timesheet, so it works quite similarly. The idea is that you're adding your time. These fields are configurable. Again, we'll pull in the values from NetSuite, and the idea is that the user is coding their time against a certain project and category. You can even indicate whether it's billable or not, and then entering a memo if you needed to, tapping Done and tapping Save. And if I actually tap on that time icon, it'll show you my timesheet for this week. It's organized by week. There we go. This is just test data, so I don't have much data in here, but of course I can add more time, or if I have to submit it off for approval, at the very bottom on the left there. Okay, so those are the 2 applications. Very quickly, I think I've got a minute here. I'm just going to show you on the web. There we go. So this is Beth's account on the web. So everything I added on the mobile app will be visible here as well. And of course, I can create time off, timesheets, and expenses on the web. But the idea is once it's been submitted for approval, you'll be notified via email, but also you can always tell via these icons. So this report here is telling me that something's approved and also rejected. And if you click on that, you get an item history. So it'll tell you everything that's happened, in this case to your expense report, when something was approved or rejected, and then any notes, right? So here I can see item number 3 was rejected, incorrect receipt, and that's when the user will want to come in here and modify that rejected item and then resubmit it for approval if they needed to. And then only when it's fully approved will it export into NetSuite. There's, I guess the takeaway from Nexonia products is that they're incredibly user-friendly, but also from an administrative aspect, they're very complex in the sense that they can capture a lot of the data that needs to be captured and calculated, and then of course export it over into NetSuite as well. Okay, so
Great.
I think, Eric, yeah, that's everything from my side here. If you'd like to take it over, that'd be great.
Yep, great. Thank you very much. Yep. Yeah, so we just wanted to wrap up. We covered a lot. That was 30 minutes. But really, again, just to recap the summary, right? There's, as I look at it, there's really 3 key challenges that we work to address when working with folks, VARs in the technology industry. First is really, managing that increasingly complex quote process. And again, whether you're an integrator doing enterprise level BOMs with hundreds of items, right, custom built from the vendors, from the OEM's design portals, or whether you've got the CDW-like model of individual sales of smaller components. There's a lot of challenges in finding the SKUs, loading the SKUs, price availability, margin management, rebate management, deal registration, tracking all that through your quote process. So that's, and then, sophisticated approvals, so that when management approves a deal, they know actually, what they're approving in terms of margin. Building and transitioning to a service business model, a lot of, almost all the traditional ERP platforms don't support that, which is why we see, these kind of siloed systems that get built up with no integration, right? Everything has to get rekeyed back in the ERP system, including not only the project and the project data and the billing data, but also all of the time entries. And then streamlining operations, right? It's a challenge when you've got typically a separate quoting system, a separate ERP system, and a separate PS system. It's not seamless and it's not streamlined, and there's often rekeying at many stages in many different processes. So streamline the current, just the legacy infrastructure, it makes it very hard to streamline a business process. So really, kind of, if you look at our solution, there's 3 things. One is, default NetSuite, which has a lot of basic good quote and order management functionality. A lot of the customizations we do, I actually have to quote. And really, once you get to the sales order to purchase order, to invoicing, to shipping notifications, to vendor billing, that's all standard NetSuite, right? So our customizations where we have to deploy them are all on the front end with, tracking quotes, tracking margin, tracking rebates, making sure we effectively record which vendor, each line item is getting purchased from, and what the purchase price is supposed to be. But once it gets the order, it's pretty much standard. NetSuite SRP is the same. There is some customization we do in the SRP, and then the integrated management reporting and analysis. So we didn't get a chance to look at it too much, but there are publicly traded companies that run on NetSuite, right, and run all their financials on NetSuite. So it's a very good financial management, financial reporting platform. Then the section of NetSuite is one component. Nexonia is the second, which is really that seamless and easy to use time and expense management. No one likes recording time. Even here, we have the challenge here all the time. Same thing with expenses. It's even harder, right? A lot of legacy tools are not easy to use. One of the great things about Nexonia is it is easy. All the projects are there. It's actually got a great integration with credit card that Catherine talked about, which is really nice as well. And it's seamless, right? They enter it, and it can be approved and routed via the Nexonia app, and then it comes into NetSuite all approved, and then from NetSuite the checks get cut. So it's a very seamless, easy to use application. Which again, you might have, if you've got 40 people in the head office, you could have 100 people on Nexonia doing remote time and expense entry. and then really our domain expertise in the VAR market. And there's a lot that we didn't really even get into. As I said, this is, could easily be a 2-hour presentation, but we wanted to kind of hit some of the highlights, hoping that you would be able to understand the, get a takeaway for how NetSuite addresses some of those common challenges. So with that, we are going to finish on time. It's 10:57, and I guess, Seth, I will turn it back to you.
Yeah, so once again, thank everybody for taking the time to join us here today. We do really appreciate it. We tried to save a little bit of time for Q&A. I know we're just about out of time here, so this webinar was recorded, so you'll receive a copy of the recording and a follow-up email tomorrow. And we do have a couple of questions. I think we'll take them offline just in the courtesy of saving everybody a couple minutes of their day. Here is my contact information as well as Catherine's. If you do have any additional follow-up questions, we'd be glad to take them and answer them for you. And once again, we really appreciate everybody joining us here today.
All right.